In the first year of growing the Lithuania Explained channel, I made a video called 2 Years Living in Lithuania. With over 100,000 views, it just seemed to be something that people were interested in watching. The following year I made another update, and so I guess it's now an annual tradition to make some sort of general video reflecting on another year of life in this beautiful Baltic country. So what is there to say this year? Well, I suppose the biggest change in the past year is that my wife and I now have a child. He was born at the end of 2023, and as first-time parents, we are definitely learning a lot about being parents every single day. Now, I could go on and on about my personal life, but I think it will all be more interesting if most of my observations and experiences for this video are connected with specifically living in Lithuania. Nonetheless, I will apologize in advance that this video will discuss a lot of stuff related to parental life in Lithuania. In terms of my personal relationship with Lithuania, well, my language progress is slow. I'm not taking lessons at the moment and just using the Ling app occasionally while also practicing Lithuanian with my wife.
Vakaras.
I'm also asking her about 5 questions a day about how to say some kind of English word or phrase in Lithuanian, but at least I haven't given up. And then, mostly through making videos for my YouTube channels, I continue to learn so much about the country. After discovering that a lot of people are interested in Lithuania's military and defense situation, I myself learned a lot about the country's armed forces after making a few videos. I've also learned a lot about the rivalry between Kaunas and Vilnius, the country's economic status, its transportation networks, and so much more. Well, I guess essentially any video I make about Lithuania that I post on my channel, well, it's the result of reading articles and doing a lot of research, stuff that I thoroughly enjoy doing anyways. It's been another wonderful year of participating in some big symbolic and/or culturally significant events too. I watched the autumn equinox celebration alongside the Neris River, I got to see the lighting of the Christmas tree in Vilnius, I attended a little bit of the Armed Forces Day Parade, and I also went to check out the February 16 and March 11 Independence Day events. As I mentioned in a previous video, it was so fun and wonderful to be part of that long flag parade on March 11th. Most recently, I attended some song festival or Dainų Šventė events, and those were also some amazing and special memories. Continuing to reflect about my 4th full year in Lithuania, there continue to be tons of changes where I live in Vilnius, and I'm sure it's the case all across the country as well. Here are just a few notable ones. So Lithuania and a few of its restaurants are now in the Michelin Guide. Buses in Vilnius have new machines for activating tickets, and at some point in the future they'll be able to handle bank cards, but not at the time I'm making this video. I guess they're still working on it. And then there are now hotel rooms up in the Vilnius TV tower, but I would never pay that much for one night, although it seems like an interesting development to mention anyways. Oh, and then the departures terminal at Vilnius Airport continues to be constructed at a crazy speed. Once it's done, it will definitely change the travel experience here. And speaking of travel, I recently tried a travel eSIM from a Lithuanian company. You probably know that NordVPN and its parent company, Nord Security, were founded by Lithuanians. Well, they just came out with a new product, an eSIM that goes by the name Saily. So for world travelers, they offer data plans in more than 150 countries through a one-time eSIM installation. I was using a different eSIM before this for my travels, but Saily is actually easier to use and has better rates. And they're Lithuanian too, so that's just a win-win. It's also nice to know that they offer 24/7 customer support, since eSIMs are sometimes less straightforward than physical SIM cards. I'm definitely looking forward to using a Saily plan when I take my family to Canada this autumn. You can support me and the Lithuania Explained channel by using my affiliate link, which I'll include in the description, and use the discount code EXPLAINED for 15% off. But let's move on, shall we? I guess with the birth of our son, we got to experience this other side of Lithuania's healthcare system. I made a whole video about the birth experience and staying in a Vilnius hospital for a few nights. As I discussed in that video, the building and facilities felt rather old and worn down compared to what I expected, but staff were professional and, most importantly, it was more or less a complication-free birth. Apart from having a healthy baby boy, being able to walk out of the hospital paying just 180 euros was quite nice. And this amount was only because we opted for a private room for 3 nights so that I could stay and help my wife to care for our newborn. Now, if she was staying in a shared room where I wouldn't be able to stay overnight, then I understand that the cost would have been free. Well, that is to say, fully covered under the national healthcare system. And then our baby is entitled to, or I guess obligated to, have periodic checkups. Again, they get scheduled pretty easily, and then we don't have to pay anything at all, unless certain medications are required. And then on the topic of paying the government for such expenses, it's now the second year I filed taxes in Lithuania. The first time was quite a bit messier, and we learned quite a bit about how to declare foreign income in a different currency. The tax department, known here as VMI, rejected my tax filing last year because something wasn't right. But then we figured it out, and I think I avoided making that same mistake this year. So hopefully it's smooth sailing from here on out when it comes to my taxes. This past year was, I think, my third time renewing my residence permit. It gets slightly less stressful every time, but what is most important is that you remember early enough to schedule an appointment, especially because it has to be a few months before the actual expiry of the previous permit, at least if you're doing things with the regular level of service. So yeah, I think for now, my experience with government administration has been pretty decent. Thankfully, I haven't needed too much from the government, and so having to deal with any bureaucracy is pretty minimal. I must admit, though, that when working as a freelancer with an individual activity certificate, paying social service or healthcare premiums is less straightforward. I won't get into the details here in this video, but that can be a confusing process. I think one redeeming factor is that when we need to call and ask for help about things or for some clarification, they seem to pick up the phone quite quickly. Going about daily life with a newborn and then now infant has been an adventure at times. I posted a video earlier about how an old lady threatened to call the police because our son was crying in his stroller while we were quickly trying to pay for our groceries at the self-checkout. That was a surprising experience. In the video, I talk about how my experience of most Lithuanians is that they are less confrontational than perhaps the average American. However, some locals, after watching the video, have told me that some of the older population are particularly outspoken and particularly mean. It's unfortunate, but I guess we're all products of our upbringing to a certain extent. Outside of that one nasty experience, I've had a lovely time riding the bus with my infant son. Since we know he doesn't like sitting in strollers that much, I usually take him around with me in a carrier. He seems to be interested and or entertained by other people, and so he makes a lot of old Lithuanian ladies smile during our bus rides. Carrying my son in a stroller is manageable, but it was definitely tough in the heat of July in Vilnius. I already naturally have a warm body temperature, so when he's hanging off my torso and stomach area, well, it's just really warm. And it's probably not that pleasant for him either. I only mention this because I have to endure this discomfort, since using a stroller in Vilnius is far worse. In the wider area of where we live, there are a few public elevators to get under and across big roads. But many of them don't seem to work, at least not the few times I tried. This one at least opened when I tested it, but it wasn't actually going down for some reason. And honestly, I was quite afraid that we would just get trapped in there. Some old trolley buses have such steep stairs to get on and off that it makes it quite uncomfortable and somewhat dangerous to use a stroller. And it seems like a lot of construction and road maintenance work doesn't consider people with reduced mobility when creating temporary alternate pathways. The bottom line is that having attempted to walk around parts of the city with a baby in a stroller, you realize that it sucks for people with reduced mobility, such as those in wheelchairs or using other forms of support. I know this problem isn't unique to Vilnius, but it's definitely present here too, from time to time. I get the sense that all new streets and sidewalks do have curb cuts to allow for people with wheeled contraptions to get up and down more easily, but I guess there are still many older sidewalks without these. I have to add that I exclude the Old Town in this complaint. I know most, if not all, old towns are quite challenging for people with disabilities and reduced mobility, and that's just the way it is due to the historic construction. And there you go. Another year of living in Lithuania. I definitely can't end this video without thanking my Patreon patrons for faithfully and loyally supporting the channel with their monthly contributions. In return, they get sent little gifts every year, and they get to see videos early. I know most of them just want to support the channel, so I just have to take this opportunity to give them a huge thank you for continuing to believe in this work. And alright, well, I think those are the big highlights, changes, and lessons learned over the past year. I do hope you found some of it interesting. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.